So, John, what's on your heart today?
Before I get into what's on my heart today, Karen, I have to compliment your delightful flower.
Thank you.
It's making my heart happy, and it looks beautiful.
Thank you. It's not mine, it's yours.
Oh, it is my flower. I thought it looked familiar.
It's from Solving.
Oh, wow. You know all about it, though, huh?
Yes, I've been there.
Oh.
Windmills and whatnot.
Yes.
Yes.
Delightful.
Should I put it in my hair?
You should. It's made of
Well-
wood. It has some weight to it.
It's made of wood, my favorite substance. But,
There it is. Fist bump.
Yes.
Lean in. This can be the preview pain. As I was telling Karen, I realized we have to get close enough to make the preview pains for YouTube and for our Apple Podcast.
and that can be
episode.
quite painful.
Well said.
Thank you.
So now we just made it easy on ourselves by getting close enough.
Easy on you, because you're the one who does it.
It's true.
Yes.
It's true.
So what's on your heart? Tell us.
So what's on my heart today
Stop holding out.
was deep excitement for the realization of how important and beneficial contrast is. In a meditation about a week ago, and I was telling this at our meditation group, so it's a little bit of a recap for Karen, but I had this realization of how amazing it is to always have contrast, and how the contrast paradoxically is what always ensures I have free will. If contrast were to go away and everything were to be exactly to my preference, I kind of realized it would do away with my ability to choose between anything. And paradoxically, it would make me like a monkey on a string in that case, because there'd be nothing to choose between. Everything would simply be what it would be, and there would just be one experience to have. So it kind of created this deep appreciation and excitement for the contrast. And for the past few days now, I've been approaching conversations and relationships and occurrences in life and just being like, oh, amazing, this isn't to my preference what's happening now. And I love it because it's showing me another truth or another way of being or another occurrence that I don't prefer. And I can then simply place my focus and awareness on things I do prefer. Of course, allowing the non-preferred to be, which was another key element. Anything you invalidate, you expand, or what you resist persists. I think you like that line, and I like
Yes.
that line too. So what do you think of this?
Oh my gosh, I have a very recent example of this, as a matter of fact. And then I took a different spin with it, so I'll share that with you too. So I was in hot yoga class over the weekend. I did 2 classes. And traditionally, it is 105 degrees, 40 to 50% humidity in there, which is already pretty freaking hot, right?
Like you.
Thank you. That's my line. Usually people don't say it to me. I'm usually the one, interjecting it. But thanks, I appreciate
The
that.
world's a mirror, and we'll high five too.
Yes.
Sorry for the digression. Carry
That's
on.
okay. So on Saturday, it was 111 degrees, and I'm like, man, it's so effing hot in here. And then she went 10 minutes extra. So instead of being an hour and a half, it was an hour and 40 minutes. And I was like, well, okay, I survived. I did it. So the next day, I had the same instructor, and it was 112 degrees. And I found my mind going, oh my gosh, she's doing it again. And doesn't she know? And I went into this victim place. And not only did I not prefer it, I became a victim to it. And then I remembered, like, oh, wait a minute, I created this. Okay, so then I went into this line of questioning. Okay, why did I create this? And I just started coming up with ideas. And in the process of that, guess what I didn't notice?
That the temperature had dropped?
That it was fucking hot in there. It didn't matter anymore, right?
Facts.
It was the same temperature. I just had my mind somewhere else.
Yes.
So I start thinking, okay, why did I create this? What could I possibly want the room to be 112 degrees for? I'm like, well, I will know that I can do hard things, even when it doesn't feel like I can survive it, because my survival instinct had kicked in, and it was telling me, get the hell out, get out, get out, get out, and fight, like fight or flight. Like I wanted to fight that instructor. I wanted to tell her, like not physically, but I wanted to tell her how wrong she was. Yeah. So when I really leaned in to accepting that I created this and that I could create something else in the next moment, then I created the fans coming on. I created a cool breeze. And it was delightful. That contrast of the hot and then just a little bit of cool air was delicious. So talk about contrast, like just a tiny bit of cool air felt like a dream at that point.
Yeah, it allows you to really appreciate tiny things a lot more. I was just having a deep realization while you were speaking, and I think it's something we've touched on before, but it really settled in. Anytime I'm in a victim perspective or victim mindset, it's always from the idea of being a limited, susceptible human who's in this idea of needing to survive. And then in contrast, anytime I'm in a creator mindset, it's from the perspective of being all that is and invincible and indestructible. But it's interesting to see if one element is in place, the other's going to be there. If I'm feeling victimized, it's always going to be, but I'm just this little helpless being who can be killed and has no control on anything. Like one's always going to be there. Or if I'm thinking I'm a helpless little being, I'm like always going to be seeing myself as at the mercy of the world around me. That was really cool.
That's
really
such a
appreciate it.
great distinction. I never thought of that either.
Yeah.
That's so cool. It just takes it deeper.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And I like that story too from the other element of recognizing when you place awareness on something, it becomes more intense in your experience. And when you simply withdraw the awareness from it, it becomes less intense. And I see that as kind of the pivotal idea of placing awareness on nothing, which Dr. Joe loves to do before going into the idea of creating, because it's almost like a car. You need to shift yourself to like neutral or like disengage the gear of focus on what you don't prefer to then shift it onto a new idea. And sometimes if you try and make too sharp of a pivot, you just like can't. Abraham talks about that idea, the pivot, and I was just listening to that earlier today because I love that idea. You see what you don't prefer, you immediately know what you do prefer. Like, oh, I don't have enough money to cover this. You immediately know, well, I love abundance because by default. So then she offers the idea of pivoting, but she also recognizes that due to law of attraction and momentum, you're not going to pivot from being in despair and lack to suddenly recognizing, oh, abundance feels this way and it's wonderful. You're only going to be able to start inching towards that direction. Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about abundance reminds me of our meditation on Sunday. So we're part of a Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation group, and John and his wife hosted a meditation. There were 18 of us, and we did one synchronizing your energy to abundance. And Dr. Joe Dispenza has us find the energy or the frequency of abundance in the field, and you find it, and then you tune into it and you match it and you bring it to you with your emotional state. And it occurred to me when I was doing that, and I don't know how many times I've done this meditation, but several, many. But this time, what came in for me was this playful energy and how seriously that I, at least, have been taking certain subjects like abundance or money. And money isn't even real. It's a symbol. It's not even real. Like, if you look at all the cash that's available in any given country, especially the United States, it's like 4% of what our total net worth or whatever it is. The rest is a symbol. It's made up. So it just started hitting me like, this is so funny that I am identifying this as true or as real because it's an illusion. And then, by the end of the meditation, I had held in this laughter and this joy and this playfulness for as long as I could. And then I just let it rip.
I love that you exploded in laughter at the end. It was perfect. I always hear my inner being saying laughter is truth. And I love people laughing in meditations or in serious, quote unquote, serious circumstances because it's an indicator of alignment and like what's going on inside you. And that's beautiful. And that's a really cool recognition. When you initially said money's not real, I was thinking, well, of course, reality's not real, so money's not really real. Like the experience is real, but like physically it doesn't actually exist. But then I love that you were like, boom, take another turn, only 4% in circulation. So from another perspective of even the real reality, you recognize if you considered cash real, only 4% of it would actually be real and existing, and most of it's just electronic numbers and stuff floating around. That's a really cool statistic. I love that.
Yeah, and it only works because we all believe it.
Yeah.
We all believe in the same illusion. That's what holds it up.
Yeah.
What if we all believed in being unlimited or whatever? Like, we get to choose.
Yeah, that's actually like deep when you really stop and think about that. It's true. Like you're like, well, the money's true because the computer shows it, but like it doesn't really like prove anything. It's still just like a bunch of code existing in some computer somewhere that we all like have faith in.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at most people's net worth, it's tied up in something.
Right.
Like stocks, bonds, real estate, whatever. It's not tangible.
Right, it's not tangible. It's not like gold bars sitting in your thing. And even that, I always thought that was such an arbitrary, yes, the money is based on gold. And you're like, it's just something in the ground. Like you could have picked anything.
Right.
I guess it's a little more rare than like rocks, but you could have picked rocks as currency, right? Or you could have picked some other like metal, I don't know, or anything.
But even the gold standard no longer exists. So we ran out of that. We didn't have enough gold to equal the amount of money since the 70s. So our money is based on nothing.
I love it.
Which makes it easier to play with for me.
Yeah.
Because why not? It's not even real. It's like Monopoly money, essentially.
Yeah.
So let's try to pay with Monopoly money.
Yes. Yes. Can I inject a new topic that's coming to mind?
Yes, of course.
That I'm excited. I love that we can do the random stream of consciousness. Another idea I've been recently sitting with and very excited about is the importance of very subtle nuances to things. I was listening to someone who was expressing the idea of wanting to be healed and recognizing it's almost like an inverted approach. If you're energizing an idea of wanting to be healed, you can't be healed because you're approaching it through the lens of there being a problem and wanting to correct the problem versus the idea of simply claiming health. Like, I think we talked about this in another episode, like burning, if every second has 100% fuel, you're like burning a bunch of it going backwards. Before you turn around, burn it to come back to your 0 point, and then you just have what's left to like focus. And there's so much power in very subtle nuances of framing questions. And you're really good at this and catching this when you're like, I don't, things that come to mind, I don't want to be poor or something, is like that subtle nuance. It has a vibration to it of like resisting something you don't want to be, as opposed to like locking straight into the idea and the feeling of wealth and what you do want to be.
And the universe and your subconscious mind do not hear any negations, any negative words. So like can't, no, whatever, anything like that, it doesn't hear. So you're giving your order, what was it? I don't want to be poor, I want to be poor. That's your order to the universe and to your subconscious mind. It's like a kind of a smart 10-year-old, your subconscious mind, at best. So we got to be careful what we put in there. And it could be thinking, it could be speaking, it could be feeling.
Yeah.
All those things.
Definitely feeling.
Yes.
I love too you mentioning that like a kid would just hear like the core concept and not like the no or the peripheral words associated with it. I was listening to a Neville Goddard meditation, and it's interesting. It's just supposed to be a proof of concept. So the focus is on a ladder, and you're supposed to go to bed 3 nights in a row imagining yourself just climbing up and down a ladder, and then you're supposed to leave notes around your house or whatever that says, I will not climb the ladder. And it leverages this exact idea to prove to you that whatever you focus on calls more of it, even if you're trying to focus on it in a negation way. And I found it really interesting, and I did it, and I sat with it and saw every time I was like, I will not climb the ladder, and read it, I was like, oh, my mind immediately goes to climbing a ladder. Like, that's exactly what it does. So of course, in like that simple example, it's gonna carry forward into a more complex one. Maybe with something more like money, where you have so many beliefs and thoughts going about it, it'll like disguise the core of it, but the core has to carry forward. It's the same thing. Like, don't think of the purple elephant or whatever everyone loves to say. It's the first thing that comes to mind.
That's brilliant, because in marketing and messaging, one of the subtleties, or even in a meditation, there are certain words that most people that are doing meditations, things like that, they know the subconscious mind only hears certain things. So one of the ways to bypass the conscious mind and to get the conscious mind to relax and to go right into the subconscious mind is to say something like, you don't have to try to relax. So Try is also another disempowering word that your subconscious mind doesn't know what to do with it, because how do you know if you succeeded? Trying, like, there's no way to know whether you're successful if you try something rather than just doing it.
Yes.
You don't have to
Yes.
try to relax.
I
So
love
it's
that.
all it hears is relax.
Yeah, I was
That's
immediately feeling it and hearing it.
That's the only word that the subconscious mind hears. And what's brilliant about that is a conscious mind isn't fighting, isn't resisting, because the conscious mind will look to say, do I agree with that? And we all have this thing, like, we're filtering, we're seeing, do we decide, does this agree with what I believe up until now? And then we're distorting things like, well, I think she meant this, therefore I'm not going to listen.
Yeah.
Or I think he meant this, so yeah, I am going to listen, I'm interested. So it's just really an interesting take.
Yeah.
I'm going to try it with my children. I'm going to try it. You don't have to clean your room. You don't have to cook dinner.
That's kind of cool. That's such, wow, what a fascinating experiment that would actually be.
Right.
To like play with someone with like good and thoughtful intentions in phrasing things that way, because no one likes to be told what to do.
Yeah.
And that would be fascinating, something you've like quote unquote told someone to do multiple times before or not do, to like phrase it in that context, like, you don't have to clean your room, like, this is cool.
I wonder if that's where reverse psychology came from.
Yes.
It
that
could
makes
be.
perfect sense. I'm gonna have to Google this. That is like the crux of reverse psychology. It makes the person like feel good because the statement is like one of not forcing, but at the same time you are paradoxically focusing on what you prefer. That's cool.
And there are embedded commands in there, which is a whole nother topic.
Which we can hop onto. One other thought though that was coming up was, is that where the phrase "no news is bad news" comes from? Like, even
News is bad news.
if any news is bad news, or maybe the better way to phrase it, no publicity is bad publicity.
I thought it was no news is good news.
Well, I think we're discovering coexisting,
Like if
conflicting
I don't call you,
beliefs.
everything's okay.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
No news is bad news. I don't think that's a saying.
I was thinking like someone, like some company that's getting like reamed out for having done something that isn't considered good, or some person, and like the PR person will be like, "Hey, no news is bad news." Like,
Oh, it's all
if you're
publicity
in,
is good
yeah,
publicity.
all publicity is good. That's a better way to say it. All publicity is good publicity.
I phrased it in the positive.
Yeah,
See what I did there?
you did, and that's why it resonated with you suddenly. But like that idea, it doesn't even matter why some person or company would be on the news. The fact that it's like getting blanketed and broadcasted out there is shifting everyone's focus to that person or company, and like almost the context of it might be irrelevant, but just like constantly seeing that symbol.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
I love contrast.
Yes.
And of course, I love the subconscious mind.
You do. You're a master of subconscious.
No, it's really interesting. So I'm going through this training right now, and it has a lot to do with the subconscious mind. And I was called up in front of the class, with a question or whatever. And I totally went to the negative. Like, I don't want this. And I'm like, I can't believe I did that. Which means I must be doing it if I'm nervous. So it's interesting to go back to default and to catch it. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. I'm really surprised. But I can't believe I did that means what? To the subconscious mind.
You did it.
I can believe I did it.
Yeah. And you caught it.
I did catch it.
You might have.
I caught it, especially right after the instructor called me out.
I was going to say, maybe you created the circumstance for you to realize, whoa, my subconscious mind is now conscious, and I catch and see myself in what I'm expressing and creating.
Yeah.
In the power. But
here's the other thing that came out was when I am present in the moment, especially like with a client, I'm not thinking about myself. I'm not thinking about getting it right. I'm 100% with them. And what flows is not from me, it's from the divine. And I'm not worried a bit about what comes out, even if it sounds terrible. Like if it sounds stupid or If it sounds mean, I'm not judging it because I've done it for so long. But here's what happened is I was trying to get it right. And what happens, I went to my perfectionism stuff and I was up in my analytical mind and using a tiny percentage of my capacity and not trusting.
And I heard the word trying too, which is so paramount.
Yeah.
We had a whole day of it, I feel
trying.
where we were calling each other out on catching
Yes.
each other with the trying word. And you're like, you just used the trying word. And I was like, damn it, I did just say trying. Yeah.
No, I was trying though.
Yeah.
So when you try, there's no way to be successful.
Yeah, beautiful.
There's not. And I was definitely trying. So I used that intentionally that time.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't, but that time was intentional.
Yeah.
And it showed. I mean, it was disastrous.
Yeah. And seeking maybe confirmation from others, it's laced with all these other nuances.
Yeah.
It's so crazy in moments of clarity to just dream what would life be like if I had nothing to prove, nothing I had to do, nothing needed other than just being.
Yes.
And at the core of my being, I know that's the complete and ultimate truth is just it's in the term human being. You're designed as a creature of being, not of doing or proving or justifying or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a big one for me. I think I told you this before, but I was on this woman's podcast and she analyzes the voice. And she said, I could tell you've done a lot of work and you still have an element of trying to prove yourself. Well, she didn't say that, but she said, have you ever tried to prove yourself? I'm like, tried. That time, I don't know if I used that one on purpose. But growing up as the only girl, the youngest, I was always seeking to prove myself, to prove that I was smart enough or that I wasn't gullible or weak or whatever.
Yeah.
And what she said to me, I will always remember. She said, when you have that in your voice, what people hear is, I'm not good enough to work with her. And I'm like, that's the opposite. That's the opposite of how I really feel and who I really am.
Yeah. How does she analyze the voice? The actual pitch and tone and stuff of the voice?
She can hear it.
Huh.
She says it's 7 layers deep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does she use any equipment or it's just purely her? That's cool.
She's just attuned to it. Her podcast is called Psychology of the Voice. It's really fascinating. And a lot of people have the same rackets or whatever that they're running.
I love the idea of her knowing she's fully equipped within herself to analyze and play the game she's playing of voice analysis and all this. That's so phenomenal. It seems like much of society was structured to be dependent upon the ideas of technology to uncover truth, but paradoxically technology can only is an aspect of the reality, so it would always be a projection confirming my own state of consciousness. It would never really make huge leaps in proving anything other than what I said it is, since everything is reflective of me. And I recently saw an awesome movie on time travel, and I'm totally gonna forget the name of it, but it has Christopher Reeves, I think, the guy, the Superman of my generation. I know there's been multiple Superman.
Something in Time?
Yes, Something in Time.
I can't remember what it's called, but it's something, a point in time or a moment in time.
Yeah, it's from the 80s maybe. It's
and
pretty
it's shot
old.
on Mackinac Island in Michigan.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yes.
As a person who knows Michigan well, I love that you could point that fact out.
Yes.
But it was very interesting because it was old-timey and the premise of the movie was time travel. But what was phenomenal about it, and the first movie I've ever seen this way, it relied on no technology for the time travel. He meets this professor of philosophy and is asking him is time travel possible? And the professor's like, I think so. And he's like, well, how do you do it? And basically, it's exactly in line with Dr. Joe and Bashar and some other people who suggest it's all a state of consciousness within. And the guy tells him to basically put on elements that would represent the location or time he wishes to be, and then simply repeatedly saturate his consciousness to believe he's basically in a different place and time than he actually is. And by the continued saturation and repetition of that over in a period of time, he withdraws his awareness from his current reality, goes to neutral, and then projects it all on another reality, and then winds up waking up in the other reality. And I found that like so cool that's Neville Goddard. It's probably Neville Goddard 101 right there, where he's always talking about experiences he has where he literally does exactly that procedure. And it's so cool to see a movie that doesn't go to technology like everyone else does to make that happen, and being like, you're your own technology, make that happen.
That reminds me of the monastery study that Dr. Joe talks about all the time, where they took a bunch of older men, I can't remember how old they were, like 70s, and then they made the whole monastery like they were living in the 50s. So they had Marilyn Monroe posters up, all the music playing, and they measured all these things on these men, like their finger length, their height, their weight, their blood pressure, all the biometrics, and they all changed over the course of, 4 days or something?
Yes.
Something crazy, like their fingers got longer, they got taller, they gained points in their IQ, they became more athletic, their pain went away, because they were thinking they were however old they were like 40 years ago. And it's exactly that same premise. It's like, well, why don't we do that?
Yeah, I totally forgot about that study. That's the most
Yes.
perfect example. And it's like scientific validation. It's like technology validating. If you put the intention and thought internally, the experience will like play out and prove it to be so.
Yeah,
that's
it's
a
so
great-
cool. That's why our group is called Leaving the Monastery. Because we're no
Oh, it's
longer
based on that?
Yeah, we're no longer in the actual immersive experience. We get to be in the world as loving supernatural geniuses.
I love that. Very cool.
Like embodying the work instead
Yeah.
of just like having a philosophy of it or an idea.
That's really the point of power. Since we're conversation topic hopping, that is the point of power, catching it in the moment and actually doing it. You can study this stuff forever, but until you actually wind up in the moment and be like, I'm really angry, and be like, wait, this is my point of power. It's almost like I'm in like molasses. You're like, I'm gonna move now. I am moving now. I'm not going to move, I'm moving now. And I'm
Yes.
using this as a point of power to do one of a million different exercises or permission slips to regain my control and creatorship in this moment.
Exactly what I did in the 112-degree yoga class,
Exactly
right?
what
It's
you did.
exactly that. It's like recognizing, wait a minute, I'm never a victim. I always create everything. And if I don't like it, I get to choose again and create something else.
Full circle.
Yes.
Bashar has this great statement that's coming to mind right now. And he says, anytime you find yourself feeling triggered, ask yourself the question, what would I have to believe is true to feel the way I'm feeling right now? And at first I used to find it difficult to find, but now it's like so obvious. It's like the first damn thing that comes to mind.
That's such a great question. Repeat it again.
What would I have to believe is true in order to feel this way right now? And sometimes he expands on it a little more, like, what would I have to believe is true about this circumstance to feel this way? What would I have to believe is true about myself? You can add like different qualifiers
Yes.
depending on the circumstance, but the most broad is, what would I have to believe is true right now in order to feel this way? And it's kind of
Yes.
obvious if it's another person triggering you, if it's a circumstance triggering you, or 9 times out of 10, it's just a damn thought triggering me. The more I sit in meditation, I'll be like, damn, in this 20 minutes, I just took like a trip through my life and I'm finally back in the seat of my consciousness. And I'm like, look how far I just traveled in thought and emotion and time. And I've just been sitting in this chair. And that's why I love meditation. I feel like it shows you exactly that. So
Yes.
then when you're in the moment, you don't lose that seat and you can ask yourself a question like that.
I know, I love that. And Dr. Joe says, beliefs are just thoughts. You continue to think over and over and over until you no longer think them. You just take them as fact. And they're such BS. And if you ask any person, like, do your beliefs create your reality? Most people who have any type of conscious awareness will say, yes, of course. So are beliefs true? Well, then you get into some controversy, because if beliefs create your reality, and if beliefs were true, then we would all experience the same reality. So what I say is, we would all be billionaires or we would all be homeless. Like, there'd be nothing in between if beliefs were true. And one of the easiest ways to remember this, I think, because right in the middle of the word belief is the 3-letter word lie.
Ooh.
L-I-E.
I
Beliefs
love
are
that.
lies. They're completely made up, just like money. I'm not saying money's a lie, but it's made up.
Yeah.
So,
Huh.
a
That's
lie.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, from the creatorship perspective, there's no blame needed, because if I was going to apply blame, it could only be to myself for choosing to accept, believe, and surrender. Is that his phrase?
Yes.
Accept, believe, and surrender to that thought. But just simply cutting the loss and be like, I can rejoice and celebrate that I see this pattern of
Yes.
thought and choose to change it right now, because trying to figure out, well, how did I get this? Where did it come from? I'm seeing very
cares?
clearly now that's just a waste of time. From my truth, it's a waste of time. Someone else can have the belief in truth. It's wonderful and fun to go back into the past and figure out where. But in terms of excitement and moving forward and creating a new thing, I found so much power in just being like, it doesn't matter anything up to this point. I'm cutting it off. I see you.
Yes.
Let's change you right now.
That is reminding me, like so many people, including me, I love insight and I love ahas. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it all makes sense. But I believe it's another trick of the ego, insight. I know that sounds really weird, and I'm going to break it down.
Yes, please.
So insight, you can have insight like, oh my gosh, I never knew it was like this. And you get it. You're like, oh my gosh, I get it. But does it affect your behavior? Does it affect your results? Does it affect your subconscious beliefs? Nope. But you know what it does? Next time you do the thing that you had the insight about, you beat the shit out of yourself a little more, because now you know better. So it's very clever. It's very subtle. Do you see it?
Yeah. I see maybe it could be applied either way, but I see in applying it the way you're suggesting it, which I've seen myself and several others apply. Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, because nothing's bad. If you have insight, then what do you do about it? What do you do with it? What choices do you make because of it? If you go back to your autopilot, which most of us will do, because we don't know what else to do. Like if we don't have the tools to advance, to move forward, if we don't have the right people in our lives, like mentors or coaches or just people that are maybe a step ahead of us in certain ways, then I think insights can be kind of addictive, and they feed this need to grow, but they don't actually create growth or evolution.
That's paradoxical, and there's always power in paradox. Bashar says it, and I always see it. Wow, very cool.
Are you having an insight on that?
Yeah. Yeah, oh shit.
Oh yeah.
Just snacking. My ego's snacking over here on a fruit roll-up. Don't mind me. Huh. Wow, that's really cool. I can see that. Yeah. I loved, as you were speaking, I loved that you were saying having someone one step ahead to kind of show you, and the idea of evolution in recognizing inspiration as an avenue for raising the collective. I love the idea of being your truest self as the mechanism, as the greatest gift you could give to the world, and as like the mechanism of evolution, because you inspire others. And as you were speaking, I was like, I wonder where real growth and expansion actually does come from. Like, I see the paradox now too. As the higher self, I'm already whole and complete, and there's nothing to be, do, or have. I am perfect, and so is everyone else.
Yeah.
In the perspective of the limited human, expansion does seem to be the game, at least like I'm playing. And in that game of expansion, I often sit with the idea, how do I get more new, like that, the square I think we've talked about before, known and unknown, where you have stuff you don't know, stuff you know, but then there's that square of stuff I don't know. And how does that get filled in? And I heard you like saying it there in seeing other people who are one step ahead in something. And I was also seeing it can be one step ahead. We're often talking about how to create in physical reality. So they're wealthier or healthier or more successful at something that I'm excited to do. But they can be equally effective at showing thought patterning or permission slips for dealing with troubling beliefs or anything like that. So the growth and the inspiration they offer can be equally or maybe more important for internal things even than external things.
Well, absolutely, because what I think is we get to watch, like, okay, who has what I want in some area? Are they behaving that way? Are they being who I want to be? Do they have what I want to have? Whatever, are they doing what I want to do? And then if you break it down, there's so many things that are under the surface that we can never see. Like, especially the mental game, the emotional game. Like, do people know how much we meditate? Or do they see, the internal stuff that we're doing every single day when we catch ourselves in these rackets or whatever you want to call them?
Yeah.
These, things that we don't prefer, or what I would say, like, even non-truths. Like, complete bullshit that I'm believing a lot of times. And I'm like, and I think it's beautiful when it happens on camera, for example, because then they can see it in real time, like it did in our first episode.
Yeah, that was deep.
I thought it was really profound and fun because I think it's one of the things that over the course of my life, I've developed a beautiful relationship with fucking up. And I think it's really fun to do it in public because it gives other people permission to let go of that perfectionism and to know that you can't do it wrong. Like, every single thing you do is perfect for your growth and evolution.
I love that.
It is, and it will be used for you if you make that choice. So, back to the mental game, when people teach you how they think, I think it's really important. But again, it could be just an insight. It could be, that's nice, and I'm going to try it. But for me, it's committing to a whole new way of being. Like, if I'm committed to being, we've talked about this, like in integrity with my word, for example, then what does that mean? What kind of behaviors am I going to show up as? If I'm not going to be in integrity, what do? Well, I renegotiate, or, I have a conversation. When I'm not in integrity, when I mess up, I clear it from a 100% responsible place. So there's a lot of things, but one thing that it's bringing up for me is we have a generation that wants to feel safe. And what's interesting, if you ask any young person, all right, what creates safety for you? They don't know per se, but they'll tell you when they don't feel unsafe. And you know when it is?
When they don't feel unsafe?
Or when they don't feel safe.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, I got to make sure I'm in the right frame of reference. Yes.
Do you know what it is?
No.
Anything that's uncomfortable. So we've talked about words, like what they mean different things to different people. Anytime people feel uncomfortable, especially in the entrepreneurial world, for example, they might say something like, oh, it's my intuition telling me not to do that. And that's when you get into these like tricks of the mind where you're like, is it my intuition or is it my fear?
Yes.
And for me, I'm going to give you a how-to. One of the quickest ways to discern that is the thing that you are contemplating doing. Would it be good to have done? Would it bring you closer to your business goals? Would you be proud of yourself at the end of the day? So say it's like putting out a piece of copy and you're like, oh, it's not perfect yet. What if I get rejected? Whatever. There's a bunch of stories we make up. Would it feel good to have done it, even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect? Usually, yes.
Yeah.
And it's just fear of that rejection. And it is deep in us. It's in our DNA. Because before it was equated to survival. You got rejected by your tribe. They sent you out off on an iceberg to die.
This was an Eskimo tribe, I'm guessing. Or
a
very cold weather tribe.
Like you couldn't survive on your own.
Yes. Yeah.
Back in the day, like, prehistoric times. You couldn't.
Yeah.
You're not meant to survive on your own. So we still have that. And it's not really supportive to us.
Yeah. That's super exciting. It brings up, I love the idea of fear and what fear is. And Bashar always offers this great insight, which I feel parallels Abraham a lot, where he says fear is when you're flowing your natural energy through a belief system that's out of alignment with your true self. The fear is the indicator, hey, you have a belief system here who's out of alignment. And since you're creating your own reality, if you're flowing your energy through an out of alignment belief system, you're going to create an out of alignment experience or a non-preferred experience. And then he says, in contrast, excitement is the same thing at the other end of the spectrum. So when your natural energy is flowing through a belief system that is in alignment with you, you experience excitement as a little indicator, hey, you're on the right path here, you have belief systems that are aligned, and you're gonna create an outcome that you're preferring. So it's really cool to see fear as a friend, and there's so many different ways to play with it. And I love the way you're saying to play with it, where you recognize, I can do this anyway. I like feel the fear. The belief system in your example was like, it needs to be perfect. And obviously you could see that idea right there. It needs to be perfect is probably the core of the fear. I'm flowing my energy through an idea that it has to be perfect before I put it out. And then playing with it in either tweaking the belief because I've seen it, and then saying it doesn't have to be perfect, and then following through on the action, and I'm going to do it anyway, like is like two steps. You're not only working with changing the thought or belief, but then you're hammering it home by saying, I'm actually going to act. And I love that. And I do that a lot. I'll see the opportunity to be like, here's my moment. The crowd may not receive me well, but I saw the thought that's out of alignment. I see my truth. And now I'm going to hammer it home by speaking my truth or taking the action which shows my truth, and recognize this may rub some people the wrong way who are excited to stay in limitation, which is fine, but I'm never going to get a new experience unless I act differently. The definition of insanity, right, which plays right into this, is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. So at some point, you change the thought, and if you truly change the thought, you change the action.
Yeah, I love all of that. You're like so passionate and
Yeah, I
fired
was feeling
up.
it.
Oh my
feeling it.
gosh.
Yes.
And the thing is, like, so many people will stay stuck in this indecision, and guess what creates clarity?
Action?
Action.
Yeah.
You don't get clarity sitting in a vacuum. You know, I love meditating, but you're not going to get all your clarity. Like if you're doing market research, you're not going to get it sitting in meditation. Like you've got to put stuff out there. You got to be willing to fail, and fail fast.
That's like that phrase, fuck around and find out, is like a funny way of saying exactly that, right?
I love it. Yes.
Yeah, you got to like try some stuff.
I know. It's a really good indicator too. Like would it feel good to have done this? Yes. Like I do that with yoga a lot because, you know, it's super uncomfortable, as I may have mentioned that a little. But I always think this is going to feel so good to have done. I'm going to be very proud of myself. I'm going to think, dang, I do hard things.
Yeah.
I'm a badass.
Yeah. And then next time it's 120 degrees and you go, you know what? It was 114 a week ago and I punched through that. So now, I mean, that's realistically probably how someone broke the 4-minute mile. Some guy's like, hey, I did a 5-minute mile last week and I didn't die. So maybe I can do a 4-minute and 50 mile this week. And then you do it and you don't die, right?
Exactly.
And a great phrase is coming to mind, which I give credit to Bashar for, and that is, if at first you don't succeed, redefine success.
Yes.
Because your perspective about it, and you can know your perspective by the emotion you're getting back from it. If you're redefining, well, at least I tried, now I know I can do hard things, you're framing it in such a way to get the emotion back, which is indicating, okay, this belief system's in alignment, it feels good to think that way. You're like tuning your guitar, you're redefining what success is by changing the belief about it, rather than looking to someone outside to validate what that successful element or outcome is.
That's awesome. I saw this thing right after the first of the year. It was on Instagram or something, and it was her 2023 New Year's resolutions, and like I will exercise, and she like put at the end of it, or it said, I will exercise 3 times a week, and she crosses it off and writes once, and she checks it off. And so all of them, I will drink less alcohol. She crosses off less. Checks it off.
Yes.
Because she redefined success. She's
Yes.
like, yeah, check, check, check.
Yes. You know what's awesome? We're both like laughing. Like it's a true genuine soul laugh what we're laughing about right now. And laughter is truth. It's like an indicator that the way we're discussing something and what we're discussing is aligned with me, and seems like you at least.
Yes.
And it's fascinating. We could probably gather a room of 100 people and there would be those beautiful contrasters for me who would recognize this is in alignment with me, and they become sad or whatever and pick that belief system to play with and explore. But
which would be
from
good
us,
for us. It
which would
give
be
us
great
some
for
contrast.
us. Yes, coming full circle.
All right, so I want to circle back to what you said about Bashar and the emotion of fear. And one of the things, I think any emotion that we're experiencing is an indicator to us. So if we experience something that's not preferred, like we experience fear or sadness, it is 100% an indicator that you're doing something that's out of alignment for you, out of alignment with your true self's beliefs or what's really true about you as a person. So if you look at it that way, instead of saying, oh gosh, I am sad, please don't say that. Say I am experiencing or I have experienced sadness.
Huge.
And say, okay, what are you here to show me? What must I have believed in order to be feeling this way?
Yeah.
So you can go back to that question.
Yeah. This is something I'd love to drill a little more into if you're interested. And I know there's many different perspectives. Abraham comes in the loudest on this. And we may have mentioned it before, her phrase emotional guidance system, and the idea the emotions are the only instinct you're born with. And they don't indicate if a person or circumstance or situation is wrong. They indicate the way I'm thinking, i.e. the belief about the person, circumstance, or situation is simply aligned or misaligned with your personal truth. So if you're looking at someone and you're thinking, I hate you because you did this, and you feel non-preferred emotions like hate and anger and sadness, it's not actually saying that person did something wrong, which is easy to misinterpret. And for a long time, I thought that's what the emotions were telling me. That's a bad person. Stay away from that bad person. Paradoxically, it's telling me if anyone's the bad person, it's me, or it's my thought or belief, which is what's out of alignment, and therefore giving me that emotional reflection to what I'm choosing to think about that person, because source or your higher self is in love with everyone in the world, recognizing everyone in the world is an aspect of myself.
So can there be a bad person?
My truth, I mean, all truths are true. My truth, no such thing as a bad person. The whole world is
God.
Pieces of myself. Right, it's literally God I'm looking at. I've spent days in that perspective. Michael Singer is great, or he really inspired me to be like, try walking around the world visualizing everyone as God, even people who you have memories of having bad experiences with. Approach them like, oh shit, I'm looking at God right now. And you literally like are. And even like a piece of litter on the ground where like you're trying to dictate how something should be. Paradoxically, most people are afraid to be God, but then they'll be like, oh, litter shouldn't be there. That's horrible. You're playing God by deciding a piece of paper shouldn't be in that location. And I was playing the game, pretend everything's perfect exactly where it is. That's a piece of paper represented, is God represented as a piece of paper, and it chose through its God self to land in that location. So like, I may have a preference for where things are, but when you walk around the world, like allowing everything to be and seeing everything as God, it becomes funny to think something shouldn't be the way it is. It's all like perfect just the way it is.
That is a fun game.
Yes.
I'm on board with that. Like I've done a prayer where it's like, help me to see this person through your eyes. Help me to see this person as you see them. Because God sees everyone as God. Yeah? God sees everyone as whole and perfect and complete. Like nobody's a fuck up in God's eyes. Not even me at my worst, which is really quite calming, reassuring, right?
I'm kind of excited to float out another topic, and I'm excited to float it out even though maybe it's a hair controversial, because it's like really coming to me strongly. And that's the idea, the experience of reality is real, but the elements within it are illusions or like projections or holograms. So it's almost like the world is a computer, and you could put like icons on your desktop that you don't prefer, but at the end of the day, they're simply electronic signals of zeros and ones that are like representing to create an image on a desktop of something, but they're not like an objective inherent truth. Because we would all agree, like we're all love, so we all prefer peace. We all prefer probably organization to some extent. We prefer like a nice green lawn over like a pile of worn out dirt. But in truth, they're they're not like objectively really present. They're almost like electronic signals coming back to us representing our state of being. So Abraham has this great phrase like, there's nothing serious going on here. It's almost like playing like a drawing program on a computer. You're like making squigglies here and there and different things everywhere, but at the end of the day, they're not like objectively real things in creation. They're like electronic symbols representing things we're playing with. So you can't really destroy the world with pollution or like kill something with something. Like it's all just a game playing out. Yeah. What do you think of that?
I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's super fun to think of that way. And everybody has a different perspective on what they're seeing, which means it can't be real.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'd all see it the same.
Yeah. It's like, I think it was in a movie, maybe like Men at Work from the 80s. God, I love that movie or something. They like smell trash or whatever, and they're like, smells like money. Like, and most people would be like, oh, that smells awful. But someone who's formed the association through a belief that like trash brings me money, so this smell represents money is like exactly an example of that. We're like seeing the same thing, but we ain't seeing the same thing.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, what do you say we wrap?
We wrap.
Yes.
Do we do a peace out on this?
Peace
this
out.
is going to be our cover photo.
Thank you so much for watching and listening. Tune in next time right here on Right Fucking Now.
Right fucking now. Bye, guys.